Her speech continued, each sentence landing heavier than the last. She joked about how I used to call her crying over bills, how I was always worried about money, as if those nights were funny anecdotes instead of moments that nearly broke me. The guests laughed politely, some uncomfortably. I noticed a few glances, curious, measuring, like they were recalculating who I really was. My hands shook slightly as I held my glass. I remember those calls vividly, sitting on the edge of my bed, lights off, phone pressed to my ear so no one could hear me panic. My sister had listened back then, but she'd also judged. I could hear it in her sighs, the impatience. Why can't you just be stronger? She'd say. Standing there now, surrounded by luxury, I felt the same smallness crawl up my spine. The penthouse suddenly felt too big, too bright. Every laugh echoed. Every clink of glass felt like a reminder that I didn't deserve to be here. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, but my thoughts spiraled. This is what happens when you try to rise above your place, I thought. Someone always reminds you where you came from. I smiled again, swallowing the humiliation, because survival had taught me one thing: never let them see you break. When the applause finally came, it felt automatic, like people clapping because they were supposed to. My sister handed the microphone back with a satisfied smile and walked off, brushing past me as if nothing had happened. I stood there frozen for a second too long, my face warm, my throat tight. Someone touched my arm and said, "That was funny," but their eyes didn't fully meet mine. As the night dragged on, I moved through the room like a ghost. I refilled drinks I didn't want, laughed at jokes I barely heard. Every corner of the penthouse held a memory now, her words hanging in the air, replaying on a loop. I could feel people watching me when they thought I wasn't looking, whispering softly, connecting dots about my past. Inside, shame mixed with anger, but neither felt useful. I kept asking myself why I invited her, why I thought success could rewrite old dynamics. Family had a way of reaching into your chest and pulling out the parts you tried to bury. I went to the bathroom and locked the door, gripping the edge of the sink. The mirror showed a version of me that looked composed, but my eyes told a different story. Tired, unsure, bracing for impact. I whispered, "You're okay," but the words felt thin, like paper against a storm. After the guests left, the penthouse fell into an unnatural silence. No music, no laughter, just the low hum of the city far below. I walked barefoot across the cold floor, stepping around empty glasses and half-burned candles. This place was supposed to represent safety, achievement, arrival. That night it felt hollow. I sat on the couch and replayed everything. Every laugh, every sideways glance, every sentence my sister had thrown like a dart. My phone buzzed with polite messages. Great party, amazing view. None of them mentioned the speech. That almost hurt more. It felt like a quiet agreement to pretend it hadn't mattered. Growing up, I'd learned to stay quiet to keep peace. Even now, part of me wondered if I was overreacting. She was just joking, I told myself. But my chest felt heavy, like I'd swallowed something sharp. I thought about calling her, demanding an explanation, but fear stopped me. Confrontation had never gone well between us. Instead, I sat there alone, listening to the distant sirens and traffic, realizing how lonely success could be when it wasn't shared safely. The penthouse didn't feel like a win. It felt like a spotlight, and I was standing in it without any protection. The next morning, I woke up with a dull headache and that familiar heaviness in my chest. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, lighting up the mess from the night before. I didn't clean it right away. I just stood there, staring, feeling exposed in my own home. My phone showed a missed call from my mother. No voicemail. That silence said enough. At work, I couldn't focus. Every email felt louder than it should have been. Every notification a small jolt of anxiety. I kept replaying my sister's voice, wondering how many people now saw me differently. Not as accomplished. Not as capable. Just someone who'd struggled and still might be faking it. The imposter syndrome I thought I'd beaten came back stronger, sharper. By evening, guilt crept in too. Maybe I shouldn't feel hurt, I thought. She helped me once. Maybe I owe her. That kind of thinking had always trapped me, confusing gratitude with permission. I skipped dinner, pacing the living room while the city lights flickered on. Hunger mixed with resentment, but neither pushed me to act. I felt stuck between wanting distance and craving approval, exhausted from carrying both. Survival mode had returned, quiet and suffocating, and I hated how familiar it felt. A few days later, the exhaustion caught up with me. Not the kind sleep fixes, the deeper kind that settles into your bones. I stopped answering calls. Let emails pile up. One night, I sat on the floor by the window, knees pulled to my chest, watching cars move like tiny lines of light below. For the first time since the party, I let myself feel how tired I really was. I wasn't angry anymore, just worn down, tired of explaining myself, tired of minimizing my pain to keep family comfortable, tired of building a life that still felt fragile whenever someone from my past spoke too loudly. I realized I'd spent years proving I was okay, instead of asking whether I actually was. There was no dramatic thought, no sudden clarity. Just a quiet awareness settling in. I can't keep doing this the same way. That realization scared me. Change meant risk, distance, discomfort. I didn't know what the alternative looked like, only that staying here, emotionally frozen, constantly bracing, wasn't sustainable. I sat there in the dark for a long time, unsure of my next move, unsure of myself. But something had shifted, subtly. Not hope, not confidence, just the understanding that something had to give, even if I didn't yet know what. The shift didn't make me brave overnight. If anything, it made me more aware of what I was afraid of. I started asking myself uncomfortable questions during long, quiet mornings. What would happen if I stopped laughing things off? If I stopped inviting people who made me feel small? The answers weren't reassuring. I imagined family tension, awkward holidays, whispered criticism. I imagined being called difficult or ungrateful. That fear sat heavy in my stomach. Still, I knew avoidance was costing me more than honesty ever had. I didn't plan a dramatic confrontation. I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I decided to try something smaller, something safer. Boundaries. The word felt foreign, almost selfish. I wrote down what I could and couldn't tolerate anymore, not to send to anyone, just to see it in front of me. Reading it back made my hands shake. I rehearsed conversations in my head, every possible reaction looping endlessly. You're overreacting. It was a joke. You've changed. Each imagined response made me want to retreat. But beneath the fear was a thin thread of resolve. I didn't know if this would make things better or worse. I only knew that continuing, as I was meant, slowly disappearing. The risk wasn't changing. It was staying silent and calling it peace.